All right, so we're recording. So first of all, thank you everybody for being here. Just a bit of context as to what this is all about. Within Natural Sciences Council, we get to see a lot of the work that CNS admin puts in behind the scenes and a lot of the conversations that are going on. But that isn't always apparent to everyone else in the student body. And so we really appreciate all the time and effort that you guys put in, but we want to make that accessible and visible to the rest of the student body. And so we want to increase transparency there. And we also want to address a lot of student concerns going into the fall semester, especially given all the circumstances. So yeah, with that being said, why don't we just do brief introductions. So my name is Rohit. I'm a rising junior biology major, and I am part of Natural Sciences Council.
Hello, my name is Brianna Middleton. I am a rising junior. I'm a biochemistry major, and I'm here on behalf of the Natural Sciences Council and the Council for Diversity Engagement.
I guess I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Audra Collins. I'm a rising senior, a computer science major, and I'm here on the behalf of ABCS, the Association of Black Computer Scientists. And so, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
And yeah, hey y'all, I'm Brett. I'm a rising fourth year public health and biochemistry major. I'm a member of the CNS Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And yeah, thank you so much, Dean Goldbart and Dean Vanden Bout for joining us today.
Happy to. David, over to you.
I'm David Vanden Bout. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Education and occasionally a chemistry professor.
And I'm Paul Goldbart. I'm going into my third year as Dean of UT's College of Natural Sciences, and I'm a theoretical physicist and very happy to be here.
All right, that being said, I think the moderators have a list of questions. So if someone wants to just pick a question and we'll get started.
Yeah, the first question that I want to ask is, given the COVID situation and everything, are faculty members being directed to adjust their grading policies for the fall to be more inclusive for students?
David, do you want to take a shot at that, and I'll perhaps add a few points?
Yeah, yes, I would say in a number of ways. There is sort of a multiple approach on this front. One has been working with faculty as they're preparing their classes to think very intentionally about the way that they're doing assessment and trying to make sure that that's equitable, particularly in terms of addressing students with concerns about technology and connectivity and things, and trying to avoid having, you know, high stakes exams that are timed and proctored that freak people out that if there's some mishap along the way. But then a larger effort to try to make sure that faculty are making reasonable accommodations across the board for kind of what will be unknowns for the coming semester. That message is coming from the provost office later this week to all faculty at the university. And then we've planned a video message or email message for our faculty from Dean Goldbart to follow up on that, to sort of re-emphasize that message with everyone in terms of needing to make accommodations for students. That will not be, however, on the kind of extreme end where we were in the spring with the liberal pass-fail policy. So it's more trying to stick with letter grades, but having people be cognizant of the sort of challenges that students will continue to face throughout the whole semester.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just add a little bit to that. Excuse me. I agree with everything David said, and I think we're strongly aligned with the Provost's office, and the Provost has been very clear to faculty to be as supportive as they can possibly be, as flexible as they can possibly be. We're going to implement an early feedback mechanism so students get the opportunity to say things, how things are going early in the class, and that'll be a kind of private dialogue with the instructor so that students can really be frank and say what's going on, and the instructors can make suitable adjustments. As David said, steering away from high stakes testing, and also being very conscious that not everybody has the same kind of caliber of background in which to work, and so we want to make sure that people are not constrained by the fact that they're sharing bandwidth and so forth when it comes to testing or anything other that has high stakes. So I think trying to do as much as we can to keep the playing field as level as possible. And there's one overarching point that I might make, and of course it's a terrible pandemic and it's awful for everybody. There's one feature that's a little bit more positive than other crises, and that's that we're all living it together. So your instructors know also, and their families are struggling with issues too. And so at least we all have some sense of being in it together. And I think that will also promote this sense of support and encouragement, because they really have some understanding of what we're all going through. Thank you.
So a quick follow-up for this question. So I guess maybe I need some more clarification. So you guys say that you were going to send out messages to the provost's office and encourage our professors and faculty to take this all into consideration. But is there anything kind of mandatory that the faculty and professors have to abide by in this upcoming semester, or is it kind of saying strong suggestions that we hope that they will implement?
So the one mandatory piece that's coming is that people need to make medical accommodations for students without requiring any documentation from doctors or other areas, so that students are not simultaneously struggling with trying to deal with health issues while trying to round up documentation from a whole variety of sources. Beyond that, instructional practices and grading pieces are at the discretion of the faculty member. And so we're still stuck with our catalog of the faculty are arriving at the means for assessment for their class.
But we do have a strong culture with many layers. So it's not that from on high, the provost has to look down and see thousands of instructors and cope with them. They're organized into these smaller units where there are personal relationships. And we'll be working with our department chairs to make sure that they keep a very close watch on how the instruction is going. And if necessary, step in and have those difficult conversations to make sure things are really on the right track.
I have another follow-up. I know we have a lot of questions, but I wanted to ask, given that like you mentioned, like we're still in the pandemic and it's the same one that we experienced in the spring, I'm curious as to the rationale as to why we aren't keeping the liberal grading policy of having pass-fail for the fall semester, and why we are transitioning into the standard grading policy, even still being in the pandemic.
There was some debate around this, and in the end, the decision from faculty council was to transition back to our normal grading policy. So it was not a one-sided decision, I would say, but that's the choice that was made from faculty governance.
I can go next. So the next question was, like, although many classes have shifted online, tuition rates have increased. So what is CNS doing to ensure that attending classes is not cost prohibitive for students, especially given the dire economic circumstances many students are currently facing?
Sure. David, you want to say some words? I'll also just follow up a little.
We're doing a couple of things. We're working with financial aid at the moment to make sure that, again, if students have issues in terms of resources or technology for attending classes, that those issues are being met, because we're kind of moving that away from student emergency services. I think student emergency services is meeting some student needs, but we're trying to also set up in natural sciences a new student emergency fund to be able to help individual students when they've fallen through the cracks. Beyond that, we've been, again, encouraging faculty to not try to shift changes in terms of their courses into big new costs on students, so that all of a sudden there's not new online services that are hundreds of dollars for the class. I don't know, again, I couldn't tell you with every single class what every single textbook decision has been, aside from our general efforts to try to continue to push towards more homegrown materials which exist on Canvas outside of commercial textbooks, and pushing away from large fee-for-service sort of solutions.
So thank you, David. And as I think you all know, the tuition rates are set by the Board of Regents, so that's not something the college has a great deal of say in. But the cost of education is something that is very much a concern, and we consider it all the time, and we think about it all the time. It's part of our constant conversation. As I think you know, there is this new Texas Advance commitment, which is an important program that we're really pleased to see, and hopefully it will grow and get even more, be even more effective. But right now, when the family income is $65,000 a year or smaller, those folks are fully covered, and there are programs in place all the way up to $125,000 a year family income. And I hope that in the near future, we'll be able to move the threshold up and up so that we can be more and more inclusive. So at least those things are in place. As far as I understand, students whose families have been severely impacted by COVID-19 can also reach out to the university, and I believe that there'll be further programs in place to help support them. There certainly should be, and I believe there will be. So we're making strides in the right direction, but there's a way to go.
I would just say one last thing too, which we think about because it's a kind of a double benefit, is we continue to employ lots of students. CNS students are one of our best assets in terms of any number of programs. They're excellent in terms of helping support instructional efforts. We have them working in a whole variety of other offices, and we have not cut back in any way, shape, or form on student employment. In fact, we probably increased student employment. And so that will be a means to try to at least directly reach out and help folks. It's not particularly tied necessarily to students' need, but I know there have been students on campus whose jobs have disappeared and not come back. And certainly in natural sciences, we're actually looking to take funds that we're saving from things that we might have usually had for events and just shift them to student employment because we feel that we really need to get more support around a lot of our online classes and provide more opportunities for interactions, and undergraduate either teaching assistants or aides in offices can help a lot with that in terms of virtual connections.
Thanks, David. I'll also just add that I know that much of our teaching will look different this year, but it will still be delivered by world-class faculty who are thoroughly committed to teaching, thoroughly committed to your education. And so I believe we will still be providing the world-class education that you expect, you deserve from UT Austin.
All right, do we want to move on to the next question if no one has any follow-ups?
All right, then we can go to the next question. So the next question is, how would you both respond to student concerns that the university is failing to consider the student safety given the high level of COVID-19 cases among UT students and the fact that many of us live in high density, double occupied rooms where social distancing will not be possible?
I think we'll both try and respond. Perhaps I'll begin this time. There's no doubt that safety is the overarching concern. It's absolutely central, and it has to be factored in heavily to any decisions that are being made. And I will tell you that having been on the Dean's Council and involved in hearing in the conversations from the Provost and the President and others, I will tell you that I've been impressed by the care and the compassion and the commitment that I've seen, and that I think first-rate minds are coming at this issue with a real thoughtful consideration, also involving, of course, our medical community. And we're fortunate to have a med school at UT because that gives us access to first-rate minds on these pressing issues. So I think you know that organized events and gatherings aren't going to be permitted. Parties are off limits. Putting people at risk continues, as it always has been, to be a violation of the Student Code of Conduct, which would be met with disciplinary action. On On the other hand, masks are a great idea. I have mine here. I wear it all the time. And I really strongly advocate that people wear masks at all possible opportunities of encountering other people, social distancing, hand washing, and all those very important practices. And I think we are seeing emerging in our student community, from what I've seen from responses to surveys, a really robust and healthy commitment to protecting others, because a lot of these activities are not only about protecting ourselves, but by protecting our communities, including the families that we may be going home to meet, and others, our neighbors, the people around us, the people who are on the campus working to meet our needs. And so I'm optimistic that our student community will really step up and do the right thing and practice a very careful social distancing, masking, and hand washing, and all the other things necessary. So it's also about our student communities working with one another to push the point. We as scientists will push the point that the science tells us what we ought to be doing, and we certainly ought to be doing it. And I think the UT community is a robust and thoughtful community that is going to, by and large, do the right thing. That's not to say that there aren't going to be challenges. And through the College of Natural Sciences and Dell Medical School and others, we have in place, I think, a robust testing service that I think is going to at least give us the opportunity to identify, test, contact, trace, and isolate in ways that I hope will protect the community. And I think they've been thought through well. David, anything you'd like to add?
No, I would just add that, I mean, some of these things are just rolling out now. The testing surveillance will be ramped up. I think the app that people will be using to sort of do symptom checks and help with contact tracing is coming on board. I think there are some challenges on the housing front. I do think that, you know, at some point, the real issues are not necessarily individuals and roommates, because people have to kind of throw in with a pod of folks at some point. It's really the larger, bigger gatherings that can tend to be a bigger mix. And I think that there's been a great reduction of those around campus. I think we've also tried to split the difference, and it's been really hard, frankly, between what do we offer for in-person activities versus trying to make things available completely to students who would prefer to be 100% remote. And trying to serve both of those at the same time, you know, has not been perfect in any stretch, but for the most part, we've tried to make it so that if students felt that it would not be safe to come to campus, that they would not be obligated to do so in any way.
But let me be clear, this is really a concern, and we share your concern. Many of us will be on campus ourselves, and I happen to live in the neighborhood too. And I think we all have to be really vigilant and just watch out and work with one another to the best we possibly can.
Yeah, thank you so much for your answer. I kind of have a follow-up question related to that. I know that gathering student sentiment has been like a way for faculty and also legislative student organizations to kind of see how students are feeling. And the Senate of College Councils actually did a survey on student sentiment regarding the fall reopening, and had around like 1,400 respondees. And with that, there were a couple questions related to a person's confidence that they would believe that their peers would do, like wear a mask and follow these safety guidelines, etc. And most of the people's confidence was very low. On average, it was around 2 to 3 out of 10. And so my question is, in terms of what accountability looks like, especially off campus, and making sure that students remain accountable, like you said, because we do need to trust in each other. And sometimes maybe that does not provide a sufficient accountability structure. What guidelines, if any, and what concrete ways will CNS and also UT as a whole enforce in off-campus areas like West Campus, where safety is very much still a concern?
Well, I will say that if over the course of the first few days and early weeks of the semester, one gets a sense that things are really not going well, and maybe sooner than that, the first few days, bring it to the campus's attention. Have it as part of the conversation. You know, your campus leaders yourselves, you have access to leadership, and we want to hear from you. I mean, you're part of the community. It's vitally important. So bring it forward, and I think that's something that we would have to respond to. I'll also say that I was comforted by the survey in the sense that the respondents themselves said that they were going to mask up. They just weren't sure that their friends were going to. And so maybe we trust what people say about themselves a little more than what they say about other folks. I don't know, but it's very serious, and keep an eye on things, and keep us posted, and we will be listening. We will be waiting to hear from you.
I just add, you know, I don't want to pass the buck on lots of things, but this is an area where we will try to work with the Dean of Students and bring things there. You know, as the College of Natural Sciences, we're focused on natural sciences, not all aspects of student life, but we want to make sure that students' voices and concerns are heard and that we get them to the right place. We will continue to push the same message and try in communications with students to really drill home continued personal responsibility and how it's care for yourself and care for other people. And participate in helping the campus disseminate that message as they work to roll this out kind of across campus.
I think David's exactly right, which is this is something for the Dean of Students. But if you feel like the sectors of campus that you expect to talk to about these things are not as available as you would like, we are absolutely here for you, and we will be happy to convey your thoughts and also bring you along in the conversation. Be happy to do
that. I actually have a follow-up question. So I know, at least I personally know a lot of people who the only reason that they are returning to campus is because they have a lab in person or things of the sort. So I know many labs don't have the option for students to take it online, but I know some have transitioned to an online format. So what has the process for that decision-making looked like? And is there still a chance that things would change before the start of the semester? And kind of alongside that, what does the environment look like for research in person?
So in terms of labs, we started at the beginning of the summer really going through with every one of the lab courses, what were their outcomes for the labs and which ones did they think could be accomplished completely in an online mode and what could be done in a hybrid fashion. And I don't know that we ended up with anybody that said there wasn't any aspect of the lab that could go online. So I think even our in-person labs are down to half the time in the laboratory compared to where they were before. There were a number of labs where faculty felt like the experience of the lab could simply not be done in a remote fashion. Those were primarily the kind of wet chemistry labs, the general chemistry, well, in fact, all the chemistry labs, biochemistry as well, but not limited there, upper division physics, some upper division neuroscience, whereas some of our lower division labs and some of our other labs felt more comfortable being able to achieve their kind of learning outcomes even in a remote fashion. And so that's where we ended up. I think moving forward, should we continue to be in such a mode, one question becomes, are there ways to do more remote than we're able to do right now by sending people home with kits and equipment and a whole variety of other approaches that might allow more remote instruction. Some things are easier to do in a remote fashion. Physics has a lot of good simulators that are very similar to the experiment. So you can actually do an experiment. It's just not quite hands-on, but it's not it's not like you're not actually posing questions and looking at data. There's also, phones are an amazing physics instrument to allow you to do, Newtonian mechanics experiments with a cell phone. Harder to do biochemistry in your kitchen. And so, for me, the most difficult decisions were ones around organic chemistry and biochemistry, which are very large, high throughput courses, which a lot of people need. And that's put a crunch, as you say, on people making decision about coming back just for those particular labs. Just to speak about research briefly, it's still an ongoing conversation, which hopefully there's a decision very, very soon about undergraduates in research labs. We have been advocating that undergraduates are a key part of our research, not just from their own educational experience, but part of our research enterprise. And so I am hopeful that we will at least be able to have small numbers of undergraduates actually in research labs. Our current research labs are operating in a very different way than they normally do, with greatly restricted access for the graduate students and postdocs and staff scientists who are there now, but it's working in a new cohort model that's allowed more people in. And with our expanded testing, we're hoping that we'll be able to continue to expand. Simultaneously, we know there's also a lot of students who will not be back and who are opting to be remote. And so we're working to try to ensure that we have a large number of research experiences for students who would like to do them remotely as well, because there's certainly a lot of things people can engage in the research enterprise that don't necessarily just involve hands-on in the lab. In fact, lots and lots of research is actually all the things that are not hands-on in the lab, but you do have to have some data.
I guess before we move on to the next question, thank you both for answering those questions about COVID-19 responses and things like that. I feel maybe that students were hoping for more of a concrete kind of answer for the holding accountability, holding students accountable part for these type of regulations that we're hoping to keep our campus and students safe. But hopefully we can maybe continue to have discussions, with you guys and with the dean of students, and to maybe kind of make something more concrete for the future.
Sure, happy to carry on that conversation. Actually, very happy to hear from you about ideas of what we could do that would also be comfortable with the sort of principles of being a student. So,
yeah. But also, like you mentioned earlier, we're all in this pandemic together and have been experiencing it. So I'm excited to see what we all can come up with.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, happy to move on to other questions.
Great. So my question deals with about the racial history of UT and the renamings of buildings. So as we all know, there was an announcement sent by the interim president, Hartzell, that there'd be naming of RLM to PMA, but that's of course not the only building or the only place on campus that has a tie to racism. So we were wondering, like, what are the thoughts on just the whole racial history of UT and making students like more aware of the racial history of UT, and like what is CNS striving to do to educate its students about the racial history of CNS and UT as a whole, and is there a push to rename Painter Hall?
So I'll take this one on, and there were lots of pieces, and so we may come back to pieces that I missed. I will say that I think first of all, this is a critically important issue, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. And this is a remarkable time in history, and I'm excited and optimistic that it's a time where we can make real progress that's permanent and enduring and really substantial. So I think regarding the issue as one that is has a major educational component is really important, because that's who we are. You know, we're a university, so we should be in the business of education and reason and evidence and data and stories. And so I really appreciate this commitment to contextualization. So let's take the building that will very soon be renamed PMA, Physics, Math, and Astronomy. I think a previous way of thinking would have been just say, well, we'll just change the name and move on. And I don't think that's adequate. I think that loses the power of the issue. And so I very much appreciate President Hartzell's position and our students' position and our faculty position too, that we should contextualize, and we will tell the story in the lobby of PMA of this transition, of the past name, of the future name, the history, the very fundamental and important concerns, and at the same time celebrate diversity in STEM fields to the extent that University of Texas and CNS and the physics, math, and astronomy community have wonderful things to celebrate. So the idea is not to just move on, but to stay with the issue and have it be part of our educational experience. And I'm really excited about the prospect of working with students to create these powerful ways to tell the story. And I hope that the building will then be a more welcoming building, a building that people feel drawn to instead of distraught by. Let's turn to the Painter building. My understanding is that the position of the Board of Regents, and it's the Board of Regents that controls the names of buildings in the University of Texas system, is that names associated with presidents are not going to be changed, at least now. That's my understanding. But I want to tell you what is being done with the Painter building, because whilst the name, I think, remains a vexing issue, what is being done has some value. So let me just spend a minute on that. So the main entrance to the building on 24th Street is going to become the Heman Marion Sweat entrance to celebrate the first Black student, as you of course know, all of you at UT. More than that, that entrance into the Painter building will be called the Heman Marion Sweat entrance, which has a symbolic value, I think, which I find, at least myself, quite moving, namely that it's Painter building, but you enter, and this is Heman Marion Sweat entering Painter building. Inside we're going to move 2 laboratories and create a space for students to study, but also to have celebrations and events, and to tell the story of Sweat v. Painter, to tell the story of Heman Marion Sweat being denied and then finally achieving admission to UT Law School through the famous lawsuit, Sweat v. Painter, which, as I think, I'm sure you all know, was a part of moving towards Brown v. the Board of Education and the dismantling of the doctrine of separate but equal, and then moving on to the Fisher decision. So you make this educational arc in which the University of Texas plays an important role, certainly at the beginning, at the end, as we move towards this arc of justice, gradually towards a more equitable society. And so, at least as an educator, I feel moved by the idea that a central building on campus will tell this powerful story and set the context and enable generations of students and visitors, faculty, staff, to really learn this compelling history and UT's engagement in it and the progress that has been made. So that's not renaming the building. That's not in our hands. But I hope there's some merit in this vision of celebrating the accomplishments of Sweat and the achievements through that process. There were more layers to your question, and I've spent a lot of time answering it, but I don't want to miss any other aspects that are important. So please remind me of the other pieces.
I can chime in on some of the education pieces.
Yeah, go ahead.
As always, when we think about new things in education, there's two answers. Either it will all be magically fixed at orientation, or it will all be fixed using the FIGs. And actually, the orientation one, I don't actually put a lot of weight into, although I actually think this is one of the great things we could do at orientation. I think at orientation, we spend too much time trying to give students information, and we don't actually orient them to the culture that we expect at the university. And I think that that will be a great transition to make, to where we start to think about what would we like students to learn about. And it's not about details about degree plans. It's about UT and the history and where we're going and natural sciences and the excitement of science. And I think we need to work on orienting students. That said, I do think that we have students across campus in our cornerstone groups, whether they're in CS pods or whether they're in FIGs or honors or various and sundry programs, and trying to infuse in those programs some effort at educating students about issues of historic racism at UT and in the college. To be frank, we need to work on educating the people who help run those programs, our facilitators, our peer mentors as well, because they're not all versed in these ideas either. Same is true across the board for our faculty and staff. These are not just necessarily student issues, but they're things that we need to start working on educating folks across the board. I think in the student division, a large number of our staff have started to work on this. We've set aside an hour a week for people to use for professional development to educate themselves around historic racism. Many of them are using it to attend Leonard Moore's class that's been very popular amongst the staff. But we will continue to try to build up educational opportunities for students, faculty, and staff. I think moving towards something in the curriculum is a good idea. I think doing that right off the bat is always hard, especially as we have some places in the curriculum that probably need to be reformed in this area. I know there's a lot of discussion about how to deal with the cultural diversity in the US flag and what that actually means and how we should use it. And in natural sciences, I think it's an opportunity for us to create new classes at the intersection of race and science, where there's a lot that people can learn. It should also, as is true with all curriculum issues, I think it's always hard to know, do you make a standalone class, or do you try to infuse these ideas everywhere in the curriculum? We've struggled with this with ethics. Do we have ethics as part of every class, or do we make a ethics in biochemistry class? I think the answer is that we're going to try to do both. And I think now the same is true with issues in terms of trying to think more about science history, and in particular issues related to systemic racism. We have not done a good job teaching science history at all, frankly. We do a lot of content, but we don't do a lot of how did people arrive at this, or who were the people who did these things. And I think that's an area where we can really build and grow. And it's a great opportunity to educate folks along the way about some of the terrible injustices that have been perpetuated for a very long time. So that said, it's going to all sound to you all like a really very slow change, because unfortunately curriculum in the university is a little slow to change. So our goal is to try to hit this with the freshmen in the fall in our cornerstone groups. And hopefully we'll be able to roll out at least some very basic introductions to these ideas in campus this fall for the incoming students.
So thanks, David. And we were really inspired by conversations with students who told us that we should have these issues of racial injustice, racial inequity, other forms of inequities too, discussed in the context of the science education. And in fact, when we've brought these ideas, as we have already, to the department chairs, the associate deans and others, there's been a widespread enthusiasm that we have to do it. We have to find the right materials, we have to do it in the right way, but we will do it. And I think it'll really make us stronger and better educators for it. I'll also say that I found the racial geography tour that Professor Gordon leads to be a stunning, shocking, powerful experience. And I believe I only took the 2-hour tour, and I should have really taken the 4-hour tour, which I will do next time. The materials are also online, as you probably know. And I think we really need to talk more loudly and encourage people to really take that journey, because it's, I have to say, I think a life-changing event to hear that story and learn about the history.
I honestly think that the biggest thing that we can do is make more change. It's less about making sure that we're doing lots of outreach to students and encouraging them to come, versus demonstrating that we're trying to create a better environment here on campus for them to come to. And so while we continue to have targeted outreach in terms of getting folks to both apply and then recruiting people who are admitted, the biggest thing we can do is demonstrate that we have a better campus for them to come to and a better college environment for them to come to. Because we can do all we want to recruit folks, but we really need to be addressing issues which are potentially keeping them from saying yes to coming in the first place.
Thank you both for those answers. And I see we're running a little low on time, so we're hoping to ask one more question to you guys. And so our final question is, as we've discussed, going into the fall semester, many students have serious concerns about their health and safety due to COVID-19. On top of that, we are grappling with our history of institutionalized racism and have become much more aware of the prejudices that people of color, especially Black students, Indigenous students, and just people of color in general, students in the STEM departments, face on a daily basis. So what do you want CNS students to know or do? Like, what is your advice for students going into such an unprecedented semester?
Maybe I could take a shot. So first of all, we share your concerns. We're like you, we're scientists, we're just a little bit more further on in our careers, but COVID-19 is something that is immensely worrying. Racial injustice also immensely concerning and something that we must address. And first of all, I want you to know that the College of Natural Sciences leadership, the UT leadership, we work on and face and think about and wrestle with these issues every single day. They are central in what we're doing. And we are really deeply committed, and you have my word on this, deeply committed to making progress with them swiftly, effectively, and thoroughly. And we're a research university. We should be exemplary in these things. We shouldn't be following trends. We should be leading. We should be really leading society in the right direction. I think that's what the research universities are there for in everything we do, and it should be true with regard, for example, to racial justice as well. But you asked for some advice. So let me give you a little advice, and it goes like this. So this really is an extraordinary time. A couple of weeks' time, I shall turn 60 years old, and I have not experienced anything like the current time. There have been major shocks to the system, obviously shocks to do with the pandemic, but also very important, profound shocks associated with terrible racial injustices which have shaken society. And as they've done that, I think they've jarred our society and they've shaken some things loose which weren't loose before. And I think that looseness gives us an amazing opportunity for positive change. And so what I would say, if you want my advice, is don't let up at all. Seize this moment. And it's not just a moment. I think it's a transition to a new reality, and seize it to really work to improve society and work with us to improve society. You know, we have this wonderful motto, what starts here changes the world. Well, I mean, let's change the world. And at the same time, let's fix the parts of the university that need fixing. And I think we can really do that together. So I would just say, what an opportunity. I almost feel like I've been waiting for the past, not 60 years, because I wasn't thinking about it for the first 10 or 15, but the past 45 years waiting for a moment when I felt that change could really be accomplished. But I want to say one other thing. At the same time, I hope we can also work to do something that's also important, but I don't want to say equally important. And that is to restore the public's confidence in science. And I think we have witnessed over the past 6 months enormous contributions from scientists. And some of those scientists are right here. Lauren Ansel Myers, Jason McClellan, for example, have done groundbreaking work that is really carving a way forward to protect the city, the state, the campus, even the nation. And that's the kind of thing that universities deliver. And so I hope we can also seize the moment with regard to the pandemic and what it has brought forward with science to turn to our friends and family in the public sphere and say, great public research universities are extraordinary places. They are cauldrons that bake the best minds we have and the best capabilities of humankind, and support them, and they will repay you just as they have been repaying you during the course of this pandemic. So I would say on both sides, we have extraordinary opportunities to improve the world with regard to racial justice, and opportunities as well to rebuild this public trust in science and the public universities along the way. So you asked for one piece of advice, I gave you two. I hope that's okay. Thank you for your engagement. I really appreciate the fact that you talk to us and you come to us and you are willing to provide us with critical feedback. It's really vital that you do that, and we're really grateful. So thank you.
All right.
Oh, I didn't know if we had some time to hear advice from Dean Vanden Bout as well.
I have to follow that now. You know, I think that I would echo all of those comments. I think as well that, you know, one thing that's really important and is a great piece of advice as well is to just make sure that you're asking questions and working to be heard. I think too often students just say, oh, no one's going to listen to me, or I just have to, that's just the way that it is, and that's not going to change. And I think it really is a time to make sure that you're not denying your own voice, and that there are people listening, and there is a chance for change in ways that there haven't been in the past. And so I would encourage you in all things to continue to question and continue to offer up opinions, and to also just let people know if there are things that are not working. And you're a partner in your education, and it's important that people know about where you stand and what your opinions are. So
I wholeheartedly echo that. We want to hear from you. We want to partner with you. Speak up at every opportunity. We're listening.
Thank you.
All right. I think, does anybody have anything else want to add? No? I think all we have. Thank you, Dean Goldbart. Thank you, Dean Vanden Bout, for your time. And thank you, Bree, Audra, Brett, for being here.
I'll just offer just a word of thanks too for you all. You all have been super engaged over the summer. This is like normally a time everybody just disappears. And I think it's really important that you have worked to kind of build this bridge piece that is a recognition that while we are trying to work with students, whether it's in NSC or CDE or various groups, that sometimes that message doesn't get out beyond that. And we're a very big college, and communication is a real challenge across the board. And so I think stepping up and saying we'll take on this role to help work on communication and get information out is a great thing, because it's something that we struggle with all the time, which is how do we communicate with a really big group of students. And sometimes there's work that's going on that no one really knows about, and they're frustrated that nothing is happening. Also true, the university is a big, slow place, and so sometimes it takes a while for things to happen as well. But I think bridging that communication gap is really critical, and you guys just identifying that role for yourselves and trying to make it happen, I think, is a really important thing.
Yeah, thanks for everything you do. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
On that note, everybody, have a good evening. Rest of your evening.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.